Welcome to the Fantasy NASCAR podcast brought to you by RaceForThePrize.com Truck Series Atlanta. It's yet another super speedway, and as we always say, stack in the back, build the winning lineup, maybe not trying to target the optimal lineup, but I wouldn't fault you for targeting some of the drivers starting up towards the front, because when we see these names, these are big names that are finishing in the 2024 optimal lineup. We'll go through all the optimal, see what we can glean. First thing we'll notice, a bunch of place differential right there. We got a lot of guys starting in the back, but you do have Kyle Busch starting up front, leading a lot of laps, which I would not be surprised to see a top-tier driver starting in the top 10, lead enough laps, and get above the cut line. Cut line looks like it's going to be about around 50 fantasy points. So 49 was our lowest driver in the optimal there. 50, Brett Holmes right there. And we got 47 right there, also with a lap leader. So I don't mind if you really are fascinated with a top-tier driver who looks like he has pretty good equipment that could stay up front, stay out of trouble, because in these three races, we've seen a lot of cautions. I don't necessarily want to just load up on cheapies in the back, although you'll think, hey, we got a lot of cautions. That means stack in the back, absolute carnage. But it looks like a lot of the wrecks, and there's been many, don't necessarily take a lot of the drivers out. So if we look right here, drivers running the full race, about half of the field. I worry more about the drivers in the back who are going to be driving around guys that don't know what they're doing, that get taken out. And so I don't want to completely stack in the back, but I'll definitely take some place differential guys from the back and take some mid-range place differential. I think is going to be the approach. But obviously, if you get a Corey Heim starting 19th, that's good. I don't need Corey Heim starting 29th. 19th is good. 15th is good. You get Ben Rhodes starting 15th. That'll get the job done. He's going to get his little allotment of fast lap points, top 5 finish. Really, you just have to run the calculations in your head. Can he get above the cut line of around 50 fantasy points? And at 15th, you think, yeah, for sure he can do that. And then your lineup definitely will get rounded out with a couple of the more precarious drivers starting in the back who survive. There will be cautions. Everyone will be on the lead lap, as we'll show. But a lot of those drivers, even with cautions and 5-lap runs to pretty much finish the race, they're probably not going to go anywhere. But there will be a couple that slip through the cracks. I mean, look at all these drivers who were on the lead lap at the end, but still didn't end up with the best fantasy day. Now, obviously, Matt Craftsman starting up front, finishing up front, even leads laps, but not quite good enough to get over that cut line. Chase Purdy starting up front, you wouldn't want to go there. Ben Rhodes starting third, unless you think that he's just going to absolutely control a race. You probably wouldn't play that play. Now, if you slap that as Kyle Busch starting third, then you'd feel much more comfortable about him leading a bunch of laps and staying out of trouble for the most part. I don't think there's going to be too many different pit strategies that cycle Kyle Busch if he's starting up front to the back where he'll get into trouble. This Truck Series race being shorter, the trucks, the way they handle and the downforce, the drivers that stay up front should be able to stay up front. And the drivers who maybe even start mid-pack that are good, that get up front pretty quickly, will stay up there. And they will probably see the mid-tier drivers stay in the back for the most part. So let's look at these optimals. So you got Gray starting in the back, no-brainer. Kyle Busch starting inside top 10 again, I think that's fine. If you can run the calculation of 8 laps led, is he going to get above that 60 cut line? Well, if he wins the race, that's around, 45 fantasy points? Yeah, it absolutely works. Even without the laps led, you take those away, he is still above the 50 threshold. And these are all top-tier teams, so these are just kind of a very, very chalky situation. The only pivot in this optimal lineup would have been, there really wasn't. I don't think that Kyle Busch starting 7th is contrarian by any means. All pretty much chalk. Dean Thompson in a Tricon truck is fine. Now, Lois Allen probably would have scared you a little bit, but you're going to have to take some scary picks. And if you didn't have the guts to go with Lawless, you still could have probably won the GPP with Brett Holmes starting in the back. So nothing really shocking there. Even Timmy Hill and Mason Massey definitely going to get you over a min cash. So if we look at the build, we were just chasing place differential, and you took 1 lap leader. Nothing really too scientific. And we can also see at their average running position here and see that although they started in the back, they were able to cycle forward pretty quickly and stay out of a lot of the mess in the back, where there were frequent cautions, and there have been frequent cautions in all three of these races. They're all just going to run side by side. It's a super speedway. This one is almost pure super speedway. I know we talk different about Atlanta, but the truck race is different than the Cup car. The runs are shorter, and then the Xfinity car is its own beast at Atlanta, and that produces almost an old school 90s, early 2000s super speedway racing. But trucks, not the case. Pure super speedway, glued to the track, drafting, you know the drill. Let's look at 2023 Opto. We got Nemechek starting in the back. Bailey Curry starting in the back. These are all now Curry, not in super equipment, but we know the niche trucks are fine. Nick Sanchez running for Rev, 20th. Max Siegel, good equipment, no brainer. You want to pick your one lap leader in Christian Eckes, no worries. Haley Deegan and Brett Holmes end up being the drivers that slide through and get good finishes. Deegan has had good equipment, just wasn't the best race car driver, and that's what makes it work. So it's another stack in the back, take a lap leader. If you didn't want the lap leader, you could have went more stack in the back. That's fine. Yeah, I just, it's not like where you're playing pure junkers in the back. I would not go that route whatsoever. I want to maximize place differential, and so far we have seen this opportunity play out. We've gotten drivers who have place differential opportunities, better good equipment, and we find enough value just by taking two cheapies that'll allow us to afford some of the more expensive place differential plays like a John Hunter Nemechek, or even going up to Christian Eckes. Let's flip through, look at another one, and again, it's not guys starting in the 30s. You don't need that many fantasy points. If we only need 50 fantasy points to get into the winning lineup, then Corey Heim starting 19th is a no-brainer. Zane Smith, 25th. Ben Rhodes, 15th. Jesse Little, that's your cheapie you're taking in the back. Hope that he survives. One or two are going to slip through the cracks. But for the most part, it seems that in our three races, that despite getting plenty of cautions, everyone is on that lead lap. No one can really make any big moves and really have that huge home run, where did he come from performance. But two end up sliding through and having good showings, and they give you the savings. Derek Kraus, that would have worried me a little bit, but remember, Derek Kraus had good equipment back in 2022. This is a McAnally truck starting 18th. Maybe never really lived up to his expectations from his K&N West domination days, but still, in 2022, rostering him in 18th wasn't insane. Like the back end of the teens, you should feel very comfortable with top tier equipment. Stuart Friesen starting second, gets there by leading laps, doesn't quite get the solid finish, but again, we got another lap leader. So I think our big takeaway so far is the conversation you're going to have with yourself over, you want to take 6 place differential plays, or do you want to take a 5 and 1? Meaning 5 place differential drivers who are probably going to get double-digit PD, and the one guy who gets a top 5 and leads laps. Now, it's kind of an irrelevant conversation before qualifying, but let's say that you don't even have to make that decision. Because if one of our elite drivers in the pool this week qualifies back in the mid-teens, like say Kyle Busch qualifies 15th, then you don't even, these are just placeholder projections, don't hold too much to that if you're wondering. If Kyle Busch starts 15th, then you don't have to worry about rostering a driver in the top 10 if you believe in Kyle Busch. If Corey Heim starts 12th, then you don't really have to worry, oh, do I take a guy starting in the top 5? Because although that guy starting top 5 might lead laps and have a good day, I think he'll be superseded by one of these drivers. Now, they both could end up in the winning lineup, but you may not even have to have the debate if the car that we believe is going to, hog most of the lap lead points or hog points or dominator points is starting further back. Then he sucks those up, takes those away from the guy starting in the top 5, and ends up in the optimal lineup. As we look through, all of these drivers are in play, obviously. It's just the differing factor is going to be, where are they starting? And that's really it at the end of the day. As far as leading laps, any of them really could lead laps. We have seen, though, Kyle Busch and Corey Heim demonstrate that they are the guys that are going to get out there and run up front all day. But besides that, you're really from 10K down to 8K, really just maximizing starting position. Gio Ruggiero, it's fine. It's a Tricon truck. William Sawalich, it's a Tricon truck. Again, they're in this conversation too. They're all going to be fine plays. It's just who's starting further from the front. And you can look at their track history and try to use that as a differing factor. And I don't mind that once you have your pool narrowed down to drivers that you like that can maximize place differential. But I think that's going to be the process for most people anyway. You know, they're going to, let's say, for example, you have to choose between Matt Crafton and Tanner Gray. And everyone's kind of going to go through the same process. All right, they both have same place differential, let's imagine. They both have the same price. They'll fit both into the same lineup. So then people look at the track history, and they're probably going to lean Crafton. So maybe it is go contrarian and you take Tanner Gray, despite Tanner Gray not really being good in super speedway events, as we talked about in last week's podcast. You look at these non-top 18 finishes, basically DNFs for all intents and purposes. 77% of the time, he is not having a good day. 10 finishes at super speedways outside of the top 18. And you know what? He repeated that process at Daytona last week. You could also look at Daytona as something to help you make the decision as well. I think other people will do that too. So you'll have to factor in which do you want to weigh more. You want to look at Daytona, you want to look at Atlanta. For my money, it doesn't matter. These are the same. This is pure super speedway race. You want to look at Talladega, go for it. But I think you've got a good data sample size and just looking at Atlanta, looking recent for Daytona. But even then, just because you did well in last week's super speedway event, more than likely things just fell your way. But if you get a really elite finish, maybe that's something you can get behind. I mean, all of these trucks are going to be competitive. You get down to the niche truck, it's going to be fine. Friesen's going to be fine. Mosak and McNally, fine. I mean, I don't even worry about Garcia, or I really like Fenhouse a lot. Has some one of the few guys that actually beats William Sawalich in the ARCA series. Very talented, young, late modeler. Runs in some of the big late model races. Has some pretty good ARCA performances. And kind of one of those guys probably turning wrenches at Thor along with Garcia. And who's that other cat? I mean, that's what Ty Majeski did for a couple seasons when his career kind of washed up. He just went and worked for Thor, got his spot starts here and there, and really emerged. Finhouse is going through that. Garcia, I believe, has gone a little bit through it. There's two other guys that do it for Thor every once in a while. I'm blanking on their names. I think Connor something or other. Wood and a McNally truck's fine. Matt Mills, the snake-bitten Matt Mills. See how that goes. This could be the day that he breaks through and finally has a good performance, but it never seems to work out for Matt Mills. He doesn't, and man, it's just tough. Mike Shiplett, this guy was a Xfinity Elite crew chief. Got promoted with Cole Custer up to the Cup Series, and then just everything fell apart from there. He was amazing too before that, even before the Cole Custer run, running that 42 for Chip Ganassi, that all-star ride. They go out and just hammer away. You were playing those cars all the time in the Xfinity Series. Oh, that's all right, though. Now, once you get down here, these are going to be your prayers. Really worry about Sutton just not having super speedway experience and seeing what he can do. 26th at Daytona. You know, Chad Kendrick's a good crew chief coming back to Rackley, was there with DiBenedetto. They won a super speedway event, so you can't completely rule him out. And again, we're just hoping for the guy to survive and catch a break at the end, so no worry there. I would like to see what Tony has done at the ARCA races in super speedways, but I'm not really too interested there. Rayum and Siegel seem to have more of a relationship now, and the Rayum truck actually looks halfway decent. I don't know for the entire stable, but it looks like Rayum is not necessarily the same Rayum that we were talking about in 2019. It looked pretty decent last week and Ryan London's not the greatest crew chief, but it's definitely an upgrade over what they've had in the past. But a top 20, last week, I was pleasantly surprised by the trucks for a while. Spencer Boyd, just, you need chaos. I mean, he did get that win for Young Motorsports once upon a time at Talladega, but not super excited about that. Bird, not a lot of experience, would worry me. Muniz has a little bit more experience, and he did have an 11th place finish last week. As I mentioned, there's some money coming into Rayum, so I wouldn't completely rule out Frankie either. Don't feel great about it. Keith McGee, again, Kevin Sawinski, it's at AM Racing, Austin Wayne Self's dad, himself. So this isn't the worst equipment in the world. They also kind of work with Rayum, who also works with Siegel. Siegel is Rev Racing, used to have more connection with Spire. That's kind of washed out. It's a weird, not clear relationship what's going on in terms of equipment. But it seems like they have combined forces. And at the very least, if you got Rev Racing kind of working with AM Racing, kind of working with Rayum, that there's better resources and the trucks in the back aren't going to be as terrible. Ogata, you can't really feel comfortable there. And Carroll got the truck on the back of the flatbed, probably just rolled it back up from Daytona on the way home to North Carolina. So I will stop at Atlanta and see what we can do. Probably nothing. But you're going to have to take probably 2 of these prayers in the back. And that's fine. You can talk yourself into any of them. And the place differential is going to be pretty much the same on all of them. Where would I go? I don't know. I think Muniz is fine. I like Josh Rayum just simply based on experience, and I think the truck's a little bit better. Yeah, I mean, I think experience might matter more than anything. If I had to make argument for who has the best equipment, it's obviously going to be Tony. But Breidinger just is not good in the ARCA series. Probably have to pull up her ARCA Super Speedway stuff, but if my memory serves me correct, and this could definitely be could be biased or blinded by last week where and my apologies, but all of the female drivers were simply turtle shells last week. And they were dangerous turtle shells and lightning bolts, not just causing every caution possible, but really causing wrecks that were violent and hurt people. So, it is hard to look at Tony Breininger or any of the female drivers at the moment and not be a little suspicious and worried about playing them. And I probably shouldn't let ARCA affect the way that I'm making selections, but boy, that was bad last week. And I'm sorry if that's weighing into my selection. If I get up to Jack Wood, it's probably a place I would rather go, but I will want to analyze his statistics a little bit more and see what Jack Wood has done. And as we can see, not the greatest Daytonas or Atlantas, and always has pretty good equipment. But again, when we're looking at these drivers in the back, A, they don't have much experience, so there's a lack of data. B, they're not very good, so the results aren't going to be very good. But Boyd simply probably has the most experience, but his equipment's going to drag him down a little bit. But again, equipment's not going to matter. It's going to be a lead lap at the end. And if everyone's on the lead lap for all these short runs at the end, craftiness and knowing what you're doing might be the most beneficial thing that gets that place differential driver through. But you probably don't even have to go that cheap, as we've seen in previous optimal lineups. You may just be able to slide in the 6K range. Thinhouse is going to be very unexperienced in this, so you may downgrade him. But yeah, that is definitely going to be a concern. Maybe he's just been on iRacing a lot this week, and he'll be fine. Thanks for joining me. Hopefully this was helpful. Again, we'll run through the optimal lineups and tell you it's basically place differential, and then probably a driver that you think is going to lead the most laps, starting closer to the front. You might not even have to be forced to make that decision, but you get a guy that you really like starting 7th, have no problem with you sliding that driver in. The only reason that you would get away from Kyle Busch, if we were to talk a little bit more about this, is if there was another top tier driver starting deep. And then you don't have to go. Then you go 6 drivers, pure place differential. And sure, you miss out on Kyle Busch, but it doesn't matter because you got another top tier truck that scored 15 place differential points and got a top 5. So that's your build basically, 5-1, or you can go 6 in the back. I would not go Galaxy Brain and take a bunch of junkers in the back. I'm looking for 4 of the top tier equipment, and then 2 still maybe in top tier equipment, but starting further in the back, giving me decent savings. And let's just look at the salaries this week and see if it's going to be that hard to crunch them in. I don't think it will be. We're more than likely to get 5 or 6 of these guys starting in the teens at least. And you'll select them. Then you'll go down to the 7 or 6 range and select one of these drivers. You got to wait on play on the starting position, so we'll see how that goes. Again, racefortheprize.com. That's where you can get access to the Fantasy NASCAR spreadsheet and all the crazy tools that I'm working on and building, all the lap data that you guys like. Busy March month. Be cool if you would join us. PayPal, Venmo, Cash Apps, how you get the money over to me. Again, if you go ahead and say you missed out on February, you want to get March, send it over. I'll go ahead and throw in the February Atlanta races, get you on board, get you rocking and rolling, or you just go ahead and pay once now for the season and get everything taken care of, and you take care of me and my fam. So that's how that works. Appreciate all the support, liking, subscribing, sharing, following me on Twitter at Race the Prize, checking all the different tools and things and scraping things that I've been able to develop that, you may have noticed that I ran several things the other day where I was able to, well, I'm not going to reveal all my tricks, but there's a lot of programs that are spitting out a lot of different things that are beneficial time-wise at the very least. Thanks for joining me. Triple Light's fantastic.